Hi everybody, welcome to today's tactical tip. Now today's tactical tip I titled, Know Your Why, and I Am Not. This could be the most important tip that I could ever share with anybody. I am not a martial artist. I am not a fighter. You see, I don't teach traditional self-defense or traditional martial arts, although I've studied with some of the world's top martial artists, but I am not a martial artist. I have spent time and trained with some professional fighters, dedicated individuals who I have the utmost respect for. Their abilities, their knowledge, they are phenomenal athletes, but I am not a fighter. You see, I said in this title, Know Your Why. My why was set when I was 18 years old, and I can't see it any other way. See, at 18, I was the victim of a violent assault. At the end of it, ended up being over 8 different individuals, and it was unrelenting. It was extreme in levels of violence. It was bottles being smashed on my face, people jumping and stomping in my head, with a crowd of people standing around, none of whom wanted to stop it or get involved in it. You see, at 18, when you're transitioning, trying to figure out how you go from being a boy to being a man, one of the things that you're taught, one of the things you know is that a man understands how to fight. A man is tough and strong and protects. Well, at that moment when this assault happened to me, I had been since the age of 10 involved in martial arts. I loved martial arts. I had also in my later teen years transitioned and had spent 4 years, and at the time was a training partner with 2 individuals that were professionally ranked fighters. So I had gone through martial arts. I had invested in, was training in, combative sport. Yet even during that, I never really considered myself a martial artist, and I never really considered myself a fighter. But the second that I was exposed to this act of violence, it opened my eyes and it ripped away any delusion or veil I had about what real violence is. And I was very fortunate because, you see, I had a very powerful moment. I had short-term memory problems for over 3-4 months. It was probably 6 to 8 months after that incident that I remember a very defining moment in my life where I held up my driver's license and I was looking in a mirror and I couldn't recognize the face in the mirror to the picture on the driver's license. My face was still that badly mangled. And I remember saying with such clarity, I'll never forget this moment, that never again. And I didn't know how. I didn't know what that even meant. I just remember this feeling. And I know what I felt had nothing to do with the physical. It was not that I couldn't be targeted, that I'd never allow myself to be targeted again, that I'd never allowed myself to become a casualty of violence again. It was something deeper. You see, the physical injuries took a long time to heal, but they were starting to heal. But I knew that the mental and the emotional victimization that I was experiencing hadn't even begun to heal. And it was very fortunate that I got connected with, within a year of that, 2 years of that, an individual who was one of the world's top combat educators at the time, was working with the U.S. Navy SEAL teams in Virginia Beach, and ended up being able to start training with this guy privately. This is a whole other story how this happened. But I knew within 45 minutes of talking to this individual that this is what I do for the rest of my life. And there's one reason for that. Because when he started to talk, I knew that he had experienced what I had experienced. He knew what violence was. You see, when I say that, you got to know your why. My why is there's one word I can't stand, and that word's victim. I want to eradicate it off the face of the earth. I don't want anyone to ever have to face or carry the label of victim again. You see, I can't stop people from, using violence and aggression. And I can't stop people from targeting people with that. And I can't stop them from even successfully having casualties because of that. Doing damage, ending lives, destroying families. Unfortunately, we can't do that. But I do not like the word victim, and I believe we can change that, because it's the process that so many of my mentors have helped me achieve over the years, where they allowed me to rebuild and recover from the mental and emotional victimization that I had owned. See, you can take people and you can inoculate them against the effects, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual effects of violence. I might be targeted. I might even someday become a casualty to violence or aggression or an act of terror, but I will never be a victim again. You see, and so My passion is to share this knowledge and training with it. And I want you to know your why, because a great many of you watching this, those of you that have seen our tips, that are connecting to this in whatever way, you see, the I am not is, I realized in that moment that I am not a martial artist. Although I've trained with some of the world's greatest martial artists and they've given me so much knowledge and they've shared so much that has contributed to who I am today, I'm not them. I'm not a martial artist. Because I can't just teach self-defense to people. I can't teach an art to people. I can't do that, because violence doesn't have boundaries like that. Violence can't be fit into those containers. I'm not a fighter, man. I respect these guys. These are phenomenal athletes, and it's not like they can't defend themselves, but you see, the rules and the weight classes and the mindset and all that type of stuff is different, because I can't unexperience what I've experienced. I can't unsee and unhear the stories and unconnect with the people that I've connected with over 2.5 decades of doing this, who have also become victims. I can't unsee this, so I can only see it. I can only see violence for what it is, and that has led me to one thing, and that is this unconventional X. You see, the unconventional X is this quality, and it's this why. When people want to be able to inoculate against violence, that is different. You are not a martial artist, then. You are not a fighter, then. You are more than that in my mind. You are this unconventional X, this protector. It's different. And what I want for people to understand off this tip is to know your why. You see, the unconventional X is to get people having conversations that people aren't having about violence. Talk to your kids. What do we say to our kids? What do we say to each other? How do we prepare for this? How do we deal with this? What is involved physically, mentally, and emotionally with inoculating against violence? That's unconventional X, because that's not what's happening out there. The conventional mainstream thought process of how you train and prepare for self-defense, or how you train and prepare for sport, is not violence. And that's great, and I'm glad that we have those things. But it is not violence. There is something different, and that's the unconventional X. That's what I want to share. So know your why. All of these tips are to get people to see it differently, to talk about the mindset behind it, to see and understand there's a difference in the tactics. There's a difference in how we're training for this and how we view it. And all of this is to lead to do one thing, and that is to never have anybody have to live, even for a second, under the weight of the word victim. I want it eradicated. I said before, I might be targeted. I might even become a casualty too, but I will never be a victim. And that's what I want for you. So if you know your why is to protect, your why is to live free, to make choices, to operate in the face of fear, to be able to stand up, to be able to inoculate and resist against violence or aggression or an act of terror. Get beyond the fact that, trying to prevent being targeted. We can do things to make it harder. Get beyond the fact that I don't ever want to be a casualty. I don't ever want to either, but it may happen. But you never have to be a victim. That's where the focus needs to be. Know your why. And if you're like me and you are not a martial artist and you are not a fighter and that's not what you're in it for and that's not what your calling is, then I want you to know there's something different, and that is the unconventional X. There is something in you that you can you can inoculate against this violence. And together, we're going to eradicate the word victim. All right, everybody, that's it for today. As always, until next time, please be safe.